Welcome to this video. This is round 6 coverage of the Gashimov Memorial Tournament currently held in Shamkir, Azerbaijan. Round 6. Let's get going. I'm doing things slightly differently today. I decided my usual way of sorting the games is giving away sometimes how the result is or how the games went. So I'm going to stick to alphabetical order now. So I'm starting with Adams with white against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and let's get going. C4. Okay, slight surprise by Adams. It's not that he never plays C4 or moves other than E4, but it's still relatively rare. And we have G6, quite a long pause here for MVL. Okay, G3, Bishop G7, and we had a symmetrical English on the board, couple of moves. Later, this is a very solid way of playing for both sides actually. One thing to take note of is that white with his early G3 and knight C3, like this, he really focuses on looking at the D5 square, controlling that very much, but he's not really preparing to push D4, opening in the center, which is, if you want, the only way to really open up the position quickly and give some kind of bite to white's setup. This is all very, very solid play. Knight F3, here black has a big choice. He can choose E5, E6, D6, Knight F6, and so on. And a move that is rare but not bad is Knight H6, here played by Vachier-Lagrave. Adams now played H4. This is one of the replies that are that is popular against Knight H6. It looks a bit strange, to push the H pawn here, but it's one of the few ways to give this position some kind of bite. If white is instead castling, black is putting his knight there, and by increasing the control over D4 makes it very difficult for white to ever get anything going in the center. H4 is at least a little bit creative, but still it cannot really endanger black very much. As usual in this type of English opening where white is not managing D4, there is a situation where black is very solid. D6, D3. White also had H5, but it's not leading to that much ultimately. Bishop G4 is a possible reply. D3, Bishop G4, and Queen D7. So black is developing, if you want, his queen, and preparing in the case of a castling Bishop H3. Castles looks a bit strange maybe, because white has played H4 early on and didn't really do much with it, but it's certainly possible. Adams played differently. He did not go for castles yet. He played Rook B1, emphasizing queenside play. Why not? It's one of the few things that white can try. You already hear that I'm quite skeptical about white's opening chances here, and that's really the case. I don't think white gets anywhere if he avoids. In general, this kind of stuff here is just nothing for white due to various setups. E5, E6, they all equalize, but it's playable, of course, getting to some kind of slowish position, but it's not there's not much hope for getting any pressure on black. Rook B1, going for a B4 based plan. This is what white has here. Interesting moment now. What did Maxime Vachier-Lagrave do now? One problem is a little bit that this knight here is it's funny. It's a funny place for this knight, and in some situations this can be a problem. Let's say he would play castles here, or he would have played castles. One idea is this Queen C1 move that attacks this knight. If you now think about this, Knight F5, there's all of a sudden Knight H2, and this bishop is running into some trouble, right? That's quite awkward. So castles is not good. So what are you supposed to do? You can play this first, but again Knight H2 is a slightly awkward reply, asking this bishop where it is going. Ultimately, he decided to play a pretty radical solution, but probably not a bad one. just went back to g8. Yeah, that looks very strange, but nowadays those moves are not really, well, so sensational anymore. If you remember, in this tournament, Wesley So played one game where he had the knight on c6 against Vichy Anand with black, put it back on b8, yeah, and then Vichy played knight g5 and he went back to c6. So it's all about finding good concrete solutions for the position at hand and not about following some kind of general principle. Yeah, he rerouted the knight to a good square on f6. Why not? And well, the whole proceedings here are so slow that it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, knight e3 to avoid some trades. Black captured. And now b4. Yes, white has to do something. And this is accomplished with b4 opening up the queen side. Yeah, rook b8 to cover the pawn. Castles. And I think around here, not exactly here, but close to that. Yeah, we had even more trades. It looks very equalish. e6, bishop f3, and now black went b5. That's an interesting decision. Of course, it looks like the logical move in a way to clarify, simplify the whole queenside situation where white is having a little bit of pressure against b7. Black, of course, also had the move b6. I'm not sure. I mean, I think b6 might be better. I'm not completely sold on b5. But I understand why black would want to play b5. It's really the kind of move, well, you want to make sure that you're not getting into some passive situation. I mean, what I think is if white gets in like here, a4, a5, yeah, you maybe are faced with some slight passivity that you're sitting in, but I don't know. The thing is, b5, it's a bit tricky after that. White has queen b1, and this is not easy now for black. There is pressure on the b file, and well, it's difficult to avoid the loss of a pawn, to be perfectly honest. He went a6, and now e3, d4. It's shutting out this bishop. It's very difficult for black here to avoid the loss of the b5 pawn. In the game, have a look there, queen a7. He gave this pawn up immediately, but it was difficult to hold. Yeah, white has ideas to strengthen his grip there. And there's also a4 ultimately. Yeah? b8 is under pressure. I'm not sure. I think it looks a little bit tricky for black in this position. I mean, if you see what happens in the game, yeah, he directly gave up the pawn, yeah? But white's bishop, of course, had to spend a couple of moves there. We had this position. I think that black here has very, very good chances to draw, but it still feels that this is a bit more than white, yeah, deserved to get, if you want. I think, well, if you go back here, this looks like very equalish. Yeah, why should white get an extra pawn position? So maybe b5 wasn't the most precise way to play and giving up this pawn. But I still think that white's winning chances are very slim. The problem is simply that we have opposite colored bishops on the board and many endgames will be just very, very drawish. In this situation, rook c1 looks very normal, but d4 is a very awkward reply. It's important. Yeah, white could not just take the open file there. Rook e1 and rook c8. And we see in some way we already see black's compensation here. What he has is c-file control. c3 is very weak and this bishop gets rerouted to f8. I think the upcoming moves are very logical. Yeah, they look very, very normal. Yeah, black got this activity in, and it's really difficult here for white to make any headway without trading stuff because black is so active. Yeah, his pieces here are very, very active. You don't get the a-pawn rolling at all, and you have to offer trades in some way. In the game, we had, yeah, after some maneuvering, we had this trade. And now here we see how active black's position is. it's difficult to avoid a queen trade, even if you also if you think about ideas like that they're in the position. Yeah, and here this is really just a draw. There's nothing that you can do. The problem is that if white pushes a4, then we see that black is controlling those possible entry squares for the white king, and the king side is completely closed and symmetrical. We see that in the game. If white tries to avoid that, and let's say, what did black play? He played f5. Let's just say white tries to invade on the queen side. Yeah, I'm just putting some moves on the board. Yeah, like black is just staying, not doing anything. And whenever white is coming over there, trying to invade and support the a-pawn, then bishop e1 is hitting, and well, all this is going to drop. So white has no way forward here. So they played a bit. This is the different scenario with a4. White opened this. But,
check.
When did they agree to a draw? Now here, yeah. Yeah, it's really just a total draw. There's nothing to be done here for either side. Or for black especially, not with the pawn down, but white simply has no winning opportunity. Whenever he goes over here, black will take the d4 pawn and sacrifice the bishop at the end for the a pawn. It's just completely dead. Yeah, not a super exciting game. This opening is something that this kind of opening here is something that can always be played by the white player for trying to play a slowish game, but very often you don't get anywhere like here. And I was still surprised that white got this extra pawn position in the first place. It didn't really feel necessary. Okay, second game by alphabetical order is Giri. Giri with white against Magnus Carlsen. Let's get going. d4, and we have e6 was the first move. I did not know that actually. I was only seeing the seeing the opening that resulted. So Magnus was offering a French defense, but Giri didn't go for it. Interesting. Did he think about that actually? No, he didn't. He just played this instantly. Aha, interesting. Okay, well, the French is not part of Carlsen's regular repertoire, but Giri is switching between e4 and d4, so it's not completely unreasonable to think that he could go e4. Okay, so we got a Rogozin defense of the Queen's Gambit, bishop to g5, one of the two main lines. cd5 is the other one. Got h6 and this trade. Yeah, this line is a really safe choice. Yeah, it's something that I also have a bit of experience in from the black side. And I think when I studied that, this was in the 90s, it's been a while. Back then it looked very solid to me, and it still seems solid to that day. Let's see a couple of more moves. e3, castles, rook c1. Takes c5. Yeah, this has been seen a bit in recent top-level games. The most relevant for our game here being the game Ivanchuk with white against Magnus Carlsen. So the world champion had that on the board just a couple of months ago in the Tata Steel event in January. Back then, Ivanchuk played castles. C takes, knight takes, bishop d7, queen here, knight c6, knight c6, bishop takes. Well, you get the drill. Everything was traded down to a quick draw. So we already see that this is a fairly solid, very solid sound line, but not too exciting. Especially we have to say that from white's point of view, this is not very exciting. Here, for example, instead of d takes c5, which is a relatively rare move, white also can just play. What is more interesting? I think it's you can try this, and now you can go knight e4. This is, I think, one way to do it. Or in general, going for a c takes d4 position, not a position with knight takes d4. Yeah, well, Giri captured, and it was part of his preparation, as we see. Carlsen went knight to d7. Yeah, it's more interesting trying to take that, oops, take that with the knight. Yeah, bishop takes, let's say, castles. And this bishop is always sitting in this idea, which leads to further time loss. So knight d7, and now c6. That was white's idea. Yeah, interesting situation now. Black now has 3 moves basically. At first it looks like he just has to take. Well, and this is a move, right? I mean, he could have taken. What you don't like about this so much is that the pawn here is a bit is looking isolated. White has a slightly better structure, and yeah, let's say castles. Is this completely equal? I'm not sure about this. It's certainly playable for black, but I understand what Carlsen did here. I mean, this is probably the move I would have chosen as well. He went knight e5. That's a bit more interesting. The idea is that if you look at this, well, white captured, and this looks fairly forced. Yeah, this is hanging also. So took there, queen takes, and well, first thing you ask, what about the pawn there on b7? Can white take the pawn? After bishop takes, black has a very nice compensation for his pawn. He's attacking g2, which white has to attend to, and then a move like rook c8. This gives black excellent compensation for the pawn. Yeah, queen to g5 is an idea with a mate threat trying to provoke more weaknesses. Black has a very active position. This kind of pawn sacrifice is actually quite known from some lines in the Queen's Gambit Decline Classical with bishop e7. So it's a known idea. Giri didn't take, he played castles. And it seems that with the look of it, this was maybe the first move that he really played out of his preparation. Well, just speculating there, but don't know. Looks like it from the time spent. Here white had an alternative to castles, and I think this is maybe one of the few critical positions in this game. Queen b3 was interesting, playing directly against the bishop there on d6, and yeah, there are now some interesting complications that black has to choose from. He can play something quite simple like a5, for example, but after a3 takes, he's stuck with a slight disadvantage for sure. You simply have the worst pawn structure. It's not the end of the world, but certainly a position that is somewhat better for white. A different possibility was bishop a5 after queen b3. Also quite interesting. After taking, bishop takes, queen takes, rook b8. We see that black is getting very active. And after this, and bishop c3, he's getting some material back. What white remains with his a pawn. So this might be okay for black in some kind of drawish sense because of the opposite colored bishops. But well, it's not comfortable or anything. It's just a question if black can hang on. So it's clearly not a desirable position to be in. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what black should do after queen b3. It looks to me that white is a little bit better. Black can also, well, he can do this, yeah, the simple, this completely simplistic approach. But here, I mean, white must be better. The c-pawn is still weak. So it's not completely satisfactory. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he would have played after queen b3. It doesn't seem very obvious to me. Maybe here. Maybe this is an idea. Just occurred to me if this is maybe an idea. It's interesting. Huh? After this black really has huge activity, and well, this is not leading to anything. Okay, but white does not have to take. He can also play this. I did not prepare that before the video. This just occurred to me, this idea. Okay. Black has some activity here, right? I mean, he can try this, for example, and try to get this back. Like this, and you have some compensation, but do you have enough? I'm not sure. Queen b3 seemed critical to me. but he didn't do it. He castled. And now Carlsen took the pawn. Yeah, and well, the difference is that now we have queens still on the board, which makes a huge difference compared to the other endgame type of situations where black had queens traded and then was stuck with the weak c-pawn. Here, black is totally fine. Yeah, it all looks very, very natural. Yeah, and
Check.
It was all trades in short order. Black took and c5, and now we see that it's completely equal, right? So this kind of evaporated quickly into absolutely nothing. Yeah, it queens traded, and well, we can spare the rest of the moves. They played a couple, but nothing happened. It's just a total draw. Yeah, as you see, both sides only spent a little bit more than 30 minutes for the whole game, and it was 37 moves. Yeah, this is all about the situation here. He has to go queen b3 to try and for something at least, and not with yeah, I think there are reasonable chances to get something. Okay, so next game is, what is this? Kramnik, right? Kramnik Caruana. Let's switch to that. What is it? Where is my notes? Here are my notes. Okay, so we had this. Yeah, after considerable thought, g6. Knight f3 is already a slight surprise, because on the top level they all play 2c4, basically, because there is little point in playing 2 knight f3. Nobody avoids the Budapest or the Benko or whatever, and c4 is the flexible move, let's say. But knight f3 is, well, it's a bit interesting that Kramnik goes for that, and he now plays bishop g5 in fact. Yeah, so he has prepared the Tory attack against g6, against Caruana's try to play the Grunfeld. Okay, so bishop g7, c3. Oh, now the clock is corrected. Maybe he played it a bit quicker. That's strange. The clock time's locked here, a bit strange. Okay, I didn't look at the clock situation beforehand, but was kind of funny. Okay, well, what Kramnik is doing is just playing a very healthy setup, of course. Yeah, developing his pieces. And Caruana is going for a d5, c5 based reply. Of course, this kind of slowish build-up with bishop g5 gives black some choice. Yeah, he can play with d6, c5, d5 and c5, various setups. This is, of course, a very, very good one for black, very solid one. a6, that's an important little move that black absolutely should play. It's a very common reaction to those kind of situations where you fianchetto and you got this push of the flank pawn. What black wants to avoid is, if he goes bishop b7 and ignores white's idea, then a5 is a little bit awkward. Yeah, you don't want to take ever. This is just weakening your structure quite a bit. Like knight could possibly come to take it on a5, or in any case, if you lose the a5 pawn, you are settled with a pretty bad a pawn. So you don't want to take, but the pawn on a5 is always a nuisance. It has the twin ideas of taking and playing a6, and you have to think about both constantly. For example, if white gets in queen to a4, a6 could be a threat. So it's almost automatic for a good strategic player here to play a6. Yeah, Caruana took a while to do that, quite surprisingly. It looks very, very normal, but okay, he has to check things and so on. But it's certainly the first move that he considered. Okay, b4 now by Kramnik. An interesting try, playing on the queen side. Bishop b7, and now Kramnik went a5. That's interesting. He closes down the queen side. This is now a forced sequence, and b5. Yeah, very interesting. Both sides now are settled with this bad squares, this weak square. So there's a possible black knight coming to c4 and a knight coming to a5 to c5. Yeah, this is very comparable at first, but white has slightly the better of it, because he has the more aggressive a pawn. The a5 pawn is kind of nailing down a6 as a weakness that a knight will attack from c5. We can fast forward a little bit and see that they both were aiming for this square there, yeah, on c5. White ultimately got a knight in there. Okay, this is still an interesting moment. g4 was played by Kramnik. Not the most obvious move, but interesting. He wants to get this bishop to g3 and then put it behind the pawn chain and then trying to advance on the king side. An interesting move. But I wanted to show this situation. Yeah, both knights are now on those weak spots. And while White's knight is always attacking a6, the same cannot be said for Black's knight. The knight on c4 is certainly not badly placed, but it's not attacking anything in particular. So I think White is probably slightly for choice here. Let's go forward a little bit up to a critical situation. Let's see. Rook g1, e6, and this is here. Yeah, as I said, first impression is that White should be a little bit better because of the a pawn, but there is a problem here. If you think you are better as White, and from what I heard read on Twitter, it was he was very optimistic in the post game press conference that White is much better here. Well, if you believe that and play the game, you have to justify your belief somehow and have to find some active plan, some way forward here for White. And this is not easy at all. I looked a little bit. Well, I can show you what Kramnik played, and this is not, to be honest, it's not very good. But the thing is that, what are you doing? If you really think you're better, and there are things pointing to that, yeah, with the a6 pawn being under fire, you have to back it up with some kind of positive plan for White, and it's really difficult. What Kramnik tried was f3 e4, breaking through in the center. As we see, this is not going to work. But well, what are you doing? I'm really not sure. I mean, maybe it's just a case where this look nice with c5 knight against c4 knight, but it ultimately still does not lead to anything in particular. That's really possible. There are those cases where you think, okay, isn't this something? But, well, Black is also quite solid. It's not that, well, a6 is the only thing that counts as a weakness. And the rook on a7 is doing a pretty good defensive job. It secures the pawn, and in situations where this knight has to move or is kind of unstable or whatever, the rook might swing over at the right moment. We see some of that later in the game. Yeah, so, well, Kramnik's plan, as I said, is not going to end very well. f3 is not particularly bad, but the continuation after that seems to backfire quite enormously. He went knight f4. Sorry, here he went knight f4. And now knight b7. That's an interesting way to play. Caruana is rerouting the knight to c6, where it looks at b4. White also has a weak pawn on b4. Yeah, this is something that should not be forgotten. The real problem for White is coming here. If Kramnik is now, let's say, if you want to call it like that, backing down and playing some less ambitious move, let's say, yeah, like queen e1 or something like that, or just a I'm staying move. Now I'm not doing much. Then probably it's not so terrible. But well, what he's facing is he played f3, which weakened e3. And if Black gets an e5 under favorable circumstances, this is a weakness. The whole idea of f3 was to push e4. And this is maybe a case of who said A has to say B. He went e4 now, but it seems that this is, to put it frankly, just not working. After knight c6, which was kind of clear. I mean, it's a case of what else? Yeah, Black is attacking those two pawns. White really doesn't have anything like a satisfactory reply. Well, I did not watch that mentioned press conference. Would be interesting to learn what Kramnik had planned against it, because it cannot be the game continuation. You see very quickly that White is on the ropes. It's a bit weird. Yeah, he took on d5, yeah, and here Caruana just grabbed this. I really don't know what Kramnik had planned here. It would be interesting to learn. Very often, it's not that, I mean, Kramnik is a strategic genius in chess, right? He's seeing that he's full of weaknesses now, and is bad unless he has some kind of concrete play. But there is simply nothing concrete that White can try. Or I really don't know what his idea was. It must have been some tactical thing. He took on e6, d6 maybe. This could be an idea. Maybe he was planning this and was banking on a discovery by this knight. That's possible maybe. What happens after knight g6, for example? This is a line that my engine is giving. That is a weird type of line. What is this doing actually? a5 is hanging and still the knight on g6 is hanging. Maybe he was planning this. That's very much possible. Yeah, that's very much possible. And if you look at this now, what is White doing here? If he moves the knight back, Black is able to do this, and a5 is hanging. Still not totally clear to me. It's not a clear position. Maybe, I mean, this looks at least far more dangerous than what he did. He took on e6. Maybe d6 was a stronger try. It's at least pretty forcing. Yeah, Black has to take this. This queen d8. That's quite interesting. White also has this move. Yeah, I think, and this is probably still preferable to what he did. After d takes e6, I mean, Black looks better in those lines, but after d takes e6, it looks really grim. Knight takes, rook takes, and here after f takes e6, Caruana was much better. But here, in fact, he had a better move that the computer is pointing out. Queen to f6. This is even stronger. Yeah, it attacks the knight here 2 times. And, well, it has to move. There is absolutely no alternative. After a knight move, I mean, if White takes, Queen takes is a disaster. Yeah, the queen is hanging, and this is also hanging, so White loses big material. Yeah, White has to move this, and then after rook takes, Black is just in a fantastic shape. Yeah, he's got great pieces, much huge activity. And look at this uncoordinated bunch of white pieces. Yeah, that was even stronger than f takes, but Black retains a clear advantage also here. It's simply due to the fact that Black is better positioned with his bishops. They are more active. White has many weaknesses. Yeah, a5, d4. This is all a bit much. Yeah, here Caruana had anticipated that on bishop h3, this is what Kramnik played, he has a very strong reply. He now sacrificed the exchange and played e5. That's very strong, based on the fact that this rook is unprotected. White cannot capture on e5. He had to move the bishop, and then e4 was the open the floodgates move. Yeah, the bishop on a8 is so great. White has no big alternative. Had to go here. And now he went bishop d5. Yeah, why not? The capture.
Check.
There's this annoying check. And after king moves to d5, yeah, that is to be avoided. He went with this first, simply based on the consideration that White can never take, as rook takes, is setting up for a deadly discovery. Yeah, whatever square you you have to go to. It's just terrible. Yeah, with the check here on the king. White cannot take, so he's just delaying the capture one move. Bishop e5 takes, queen f2, and queen a5. Yeah, White is falling apart. His king position is just too bad. Rook f8. Yeah, and we still have a couple of pawns on the queen side. I should never forget those, but it's not even necessary. Yeah, the black pieces just invade here with decisive effect. Oh, they continued quite a longish while. I didn't even look at the final couple of moves. It was
check.
Oh wow, he played this on for quite a bit. Yeah, this is mate now. Takes
check
and checkmate.
Checkmate.
Yeah, Kramnik certainly was a bit frustrated there. Yeah, it's a bit understandable. I mean, it's not that he spoiled something brilliant or so, but it's a case where White was trying to create something, trying to get something active going with his f3 and e4 plan, and it completely backfired after knight c6. I think he probably had some kind of miscalculation that he had when he went for this idea, and this was the problem. He certainly saw that this is leading to strategic problems, but he was relying on some kind of line that did not work out. Okay, the next game to check is it Mamedov? Yes, it should be Mamedov. Huh? Mamedov Anand. Getting confused there with the alphabet. Mamedov Anand. Okay, 1e4 by Mamedov, his usual move, and Vishy goes for c6, the Caro-Kann defense. Yeah, this is part of his repertoire, but not a very regular opening from him. I was a bit surprised to see that, but maybe it is due to the fact that Mamedov is not playing the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. He has played, especially in recent months, some offbeat lines, relatively offbeat lines, like knight f3, or he went also for knight e2, which is a funny move. Yeah, so he played some kind of offbeat lines, and maybe Vishy was speculating to get one of those, but Mamedov just went d4, d5, and knight c3. Very normal. Takes, knight d7. Yeah, and well, Mamedov's strategy in this tournament seems to be being solid first, and it sounds maybe a bit cynical, but let's say he seems to be okay if he draws 8 games and loses one. He doesn't really try to, let's say, come out with guns blazing, win 2 games, lose 7 or something like that. Yeah, which is, I mean, it's understandable. Yeah, you want to get your foot on solid ground when you are entering a tournament of that strength for the first time. So he wants to play solid chess. Bishop c4, knight f6, and captures. This is the signal that, okay, I want to be solid today. Knight g5 is the move here to try for something, like e6, queen e2, knight b6. This can actually lead to fairly interesting and sharp positions where like here, d6, back, c5. Yeah, White sometimes even castles long and tries something here with g4. Just one line. I mean, White also castles short quite a bit, but this is still interesting. But he did not go for that. As mentioned, he took and played c3. This is a super solid line where White is delaying the knight f3 move for one moment. The idea is that whenever you go knight f3, there's always bishop g4 around the corner, giving black an easy development. Of course, if you do this here, bishop g4 is not a good idea due to this tactic. But in general, yeah, you have to be have to be conscious of bishop g4. Here black can play some other move, bishop f5, or some other prep move to avoid the immediate check there on f7. Yeah, c3, queen c7. This is a waiting move to wait for knight f3. Knight f3, bishop g4. Yeah, you might ask, why not bishop f7 now? Have a look.
Check.
This is the point. Yeah, this is why I put the queen on c7. h3, and black just took. This is the best solution. If you try to keep your bishop, you're always subject of h4, g4 business, trying to push the bishop on the corner, and taking is just simpler. But this is also a structure which is notoriously drawish. Yeah, if we look at this, yeah, White is just developing, and centralizing. And the best that black can do is basically just sit on the position and be content with an equal position. Yeah, bishop d6, trying to trade stuff. Yeah, it's really not much to comment on. They traded pieces here. Yeah, of course not the capture, right? This is not a good idea. But it's not necessary at all. Yeah, it is very difficult in this kind of position to make any headway. White has no great plan. He's quite active. Well, we see that rooks on the e-file, but what exactly are you planning to do if black is not falling to, let's say, bishop takes e6 sacrifice? It's very difficult. You can try to put your kingside pawns in motion, but that also weakens quite a bit. And black really can just sit. I mean, he can do, like, he can try that, b5, b4, or c5, but it's not so easy to get in. Yeah, in the game, king g7 was played, queen g3. Yeah, this is not working anymore as the king is helping to protect. Queen g3, and well, they put out a couple of more moves. Not going to be... Yeah, this was the repetition. Yeah, have to be honest there, that wasn't a very exciting game. And this is, well, a little bit due to the fact that white decided to play it very safe. He can also play more interestingly against the Caro-Kann, of course. I think Vichy was speculating a little bit with c6 that maybe Mamedov was going for one of his sidelines that he recently had played and get a more interesting fight. It's a matter of if they play as black against someone who's playing e4 and is content with a draw, it's difficult. And well, Arnaud is in a good position in this tournament, but he certainly does not want to lose or risk losing. So yeah, he has to try to find something or play something that has some ideas behind it that they maybe have some chances to do. To go for a win, but he doesn't want to risk much. And he was offering a little bit like, okay, I go with the Caro-Kann. Are you playing one of your interesting lines? Okay, no, you don't. Do you play some interesting main line? No, you don't. Okay, you don't want anything. Okay, then it's a draw. So it's those kind of games always a bit disappointing to watch, but you understand the rationale. You don't want to do anything crazy. And what is it that Vichy could have done? c5, d6 maybe. Yeah, Sicilian, Mamedov plays bishop b5 check. That's also rock solid. It's difficult if you play against someone who just wants a draw and is a decent player. I mean, they are more than decent, you know, but from Vichy's point of view is certainly the better player than Mamedov, but it's not that he's playing some kind of bum from the street. Okay, let's get going. Wesley So against Shahriar Mamedyarov. This is the final game of this round of this presentation. We have Wesley going d4. Yeah, he plays all opening moves, and again the Slav. This is what Mamedyarov had played earlier in the event, and this is a heavily theoretical game. I'm not going to talk so much about all the moves leading to it. Knight e5 is one of two main lines, and the other one is e3. e3 is arguably the more, let's say, the simpler way to play. Knight e5 allows and offers some very sharp complications. Knight d7, knight c4, queen c7, and now g3 and e5. This is a line that was out of fashion for a very, very long time, until the year about 2000, when Morozevich was playing this quite often with excellent results. And one of the reasons for his excellent results is the move g5. Yeah, that's a really, really modern move. Yeah, you go g5 out of the blue. It was a bit shocking at the time to see that. Nowadays it's just the main line of the Slav. Yeah, it looks a bit crazy, but what black is doing, he fights against this pin. Yeah, white obviously cannot take the pawn. This is hanging then. So he has two choices. He can take on e5, or he can play knight e3, counter-attacking this bishop there. Nowadays, knight e3 is probably the main move, and it was played. G takes f4 and knight takes f5. Now this was played also in the very first game with that on high level. Kasparov of all people with white against Morosevic. Long castles. Queen c2, knight c5. X takes a5. Yeah, this is a very peculiar position. Black has good pieces there, c5 and e5 knights. Yeah, they are very nicely positioned on the dark squares. In general, black has a good grip on the dark squares, but white's knight is very strong on f5. And in general, black's king position also sometimes tends to be shaky. It is not a very very classical pawn formation here, this kind of thing. So it's very sharp, but also very well explored. This has been played countless of times. h5.
Check.
Trades, rook d1, queen here, bishop h3, yeah, threatening on the diagonal, so king b8, queen d2, yeah, eyeing the critical squares there, bishop e7, yeah, bishop e7. This is one of the moves. Have a look there. Mamedyarov, I mean, he's playing this line now, and he plays bishop e7 after 30 moves, yeah, 30 minutes of thinking. And this is a bit strange, to be perfectly honest, because I know it sounds weird, but the theory of this line is starting here. It's not ending here. This is all known to people who play that regularly. And what I did is I picked up the book about this opening, which is the Classical Slav by Boris Avrukh, released last year. And well, this is, of course, in the book. And what does Avrukh say about bishop e7? He says, this is a bad move, and black should play h4 with excellent equalizing chances. Okay, I'm not going to analyze this now. Yeah, there are plenty of ideas. Takes bishop h6, for example. But it's not really feasible to make a theoretical overview now about this opening. But this is really, really well known. Bishop e7, it's in the book. It's just bad. And why is it bad? Because of what Wesley is playing. Queen e3, queen g6, rook d4. This is technically a novelty. It has never been played in a game, at least in my huge database. But in Avrukh's book, there's exactly this given. Rook d4 with a large advantage for white. So this is what we call an opening disaster on that level for Mamedyarov. He just plays a line that is known to be terrible. Quite strange, to be honest, because I know it sounds weird because it's move 20 or something, but this is the beginning of this line. It's just like that. It's just strange that he falls into this kind of bad situation. Okay, what can you say? He went knight e6 and knight e4. That's one of the problems. White with rook d4 has dual ideas. He sometimes can play knight to e4, but he also uses the rook on the fourth rank to control a crucial square. Knight e6, as mentioned, is what he played. Here, for example, h4, the idea that we have seen before, is simply answered by the capture. And here we see 1 point here of the rook. You're winning a pawn there. So h4 is not possible. I'm not quite sure if you can improve here for black. I mean, what are you playing? A queen g5? Getting just pushed back. It's simply not a good position. Knight e6, knight e4, and rook d7. This is what was played. And we come to the critical position right now. Mamedyarov went rook d8, attacking the rook. And in this situation now, Wesley with white here, so he went queen to d3 relatively quickly. It seems that here the key moment is here. This is a correct sentence, I guess. Here there is the key moment to improve on white's play. But it's not trivial, of course. The computer is giving the trade there on d8, and it has some very concrete points. Let's start with bishop d8. If the bishop takes, white has this move, which is attacking f7, and it's very awkward. How do you protect that pawn? It's not just a pawn; it's also this this fork on queen and bishop. So you just cannot move the f pawn. Let's say, yeah. There's also a queen b3, by the way. That's also very, very problematic. Mate on b7, wow, and e6 is hanging. Yeah, this is a huge problem here. Black, to continue, has to play knight g5, bishop g2, knight e4, knight f7. This is a weird computer move, typical computer stuff that is almost impossible to see for a human. Here, the end of this line sees white being a pawn up. A5 is hanging, and he protects the knight there. Very strange line. White is better. This was one line after rook d8. The other was knight d8, and here white, what was the line? Takes, and now queen d2, I think, if I have that right. Yeah, queen d2, attacking a5. Oops, attacking a5, and it's difficult to protect that. Yeah, if you think about this, he can go here, but white is able to capture because, sorry, d8 is hanging. Yeah, it's simply not very good. But what can you say? It's not a very good position for black. The capture on d8 seems to be the best reply. After queen d3, it is a forced draw, really. It is just like that. Takes, queen takes e4. Yeah, in knight e7. That was white's idea. But after this, there's always the idea of a perpetual. And there is no way out of that. He took there on f7.
Check.
But here we see the problem. There is knight f3 coming, and it's absolutely no way out of this perpetual. Knight f3, knight e1, those kind of series of checks. It's impossible to prevent.
Check.
Yeah, he
check.
ultimately decided to give
check.
the perpetual himself.
Check.
So a draw in this game, and a very lucky one for Mamedyarov. Playing a clearly worse opening here with this bishop e7, which is known to theory very much, is something that you usually cannot afford on that level. But it turned out to be not an easily refutation. I mean, Wesley played the right moves there with rook d4, but then at this particular moment to take on d8 and figure out all those somewhat weird complications is definitely tricky, and that's nothing that probably is in anybody's preparation from the white side. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this coverage of round 6. I'll be back with coverage of round 7, of course. Maybe on the same day, maybe as it is with this round on the following day. I'll see what I can do with my other things on my schedule. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.